I'd like to share about how I came to be doing the work that I'm doing at Origins Collaborative Care so that you know a little bit about how I got here and why I got here, and the good fortune that I had along my way to kind of land doing this incredibly rewarding work at Origins Collaborative Care. My dad was a Marine in the Viet Nam War and came home with PTSD, and so my household was quite intense with a lot of strong energy, and I was the oldest child and learned, from a very young age to be highly attuned to human emotion, namely my dad's, but also like what my mom needed for, emotional support. And then I had a little sister, a year and a half younger than me. And, just as oldest children do, I kind of ended up being the one that at least felt that I needed to keep the family and our small landscaping business kind of okay. I was incredibly blessed to be the one that my dad ended up processing his Vietnam War experiences with. In my later teen years, he got counseling for his PTSD, and in the process of really sifting through his experiences and how they shaped him and his responses to current day life in family, civilian life, he cried with me and looked at the slides that one of his buddies had taken and given to him over and over and over. And I would sit with him and listen to the stories, and again, really attuned to the human experience of suffering. I just really feel that it shaped who I am as a human being and how I see the world and myself and my humanness and my capacities, as well as everybody else that I come in contact with. So, of course, I have a deep, compassion and love for veterans, and, I think I understand their difficulties in coming home from the war and not coming home from the wars, all the wars. The shared experiences of veterans has shaped me in my life and my work. I ended up with what I consider a gift to be able to gently broach the subjects that are kind of like the elephant in the room. And in my medical career, that has meant that I can say when I think somebody's afraid that they have something that might cause their death, but no provider has found it, I'm able to say that. And even just bringing words and voice and sound to these fears can be really soothing and, just kind of getting the elephant off the table. And then once it's been spoken, you're able to kind of sort it out and go through and make a plan. And it's so detrimental to not be able to make a plan because you can't speak something. And that's a gift that my dad gave me with his PTSD and lack of capacity to access language for his experience for much of my childhood. From a very young age, I kind of always looked out for the underdog or something.
Yeah.
My sister used to tell me when she was like an old teenager and I was a young adult, she contacted me at one point and said, I just want to remind you about how you used to protect the kids on the school bus that were being bullied. And, that you would stand up to the boys who were being nasty to this other boy. And it is interesting to see like that pattern from my early childhood. I'm certain it comes from my dad. And yet also it is kind of what I developed into as a nurse practitioner, that I always have, gone that mile to figure out this person is not getting the results that they ought to be from our care and from our diagnostics, and they're not getting the answers that they need, want, and deserve. And I've like always been that person, that provider who digs and digs and digs until we can figure out what is going on and how do we manage to get this person better. And in a really ironic way, that really is how I became Origins Collaborative Care, and that Micaela and I co-founded this company that is really here to serve exactly those people. And we felt the call to create a practice that formerly hasn't existed, to get help, to be help for the people that have not gotten resolution to their very incredibly real and debilitating health problems up until this point. I graduated from high school a semester early because I hated high school and I just wanted to get out. And I worked, and one of the early work experiences was that I ended up on a salmon processing boat in Alaska. And that experience was life-altering in many ways for me. I met people I never would have met, and I learned that it was a real detriment that I had taken French all through school, because actually in the world that I live in, people speak Spanish, not French. And so it inspired me to want to learn Spanish so that I could experience people from other, countries and cultures as the same as me instead of very much other. Because when I realized at 19 on the boat in Alaska that the fact that I couldn't understand people talking made me feel that they were enough other from me, and I knew that I needed to be able to understand them the way that they could understand me, so that I could realize their humanity in a visceral way instead of just an intellectual way. And so that experience was incredibly transformative for me, and I did end up going to college one day and minoring in Spanish, and have traveled in Mexico. And my Spanish is pretty rusty now, but I cherish it anyway. And so the Alaska experience was transformative for me in another very big way, which was that it ended a week early. The salmon season was ending anyway, but it ended for me by being flown out because I had experienced a closed head injury, where a big heavy roll of plastic bags hit me on the head and knocked me out, and ended up creating a significant amount of blood in my head somewhere. At the time we didn't have the same level of assessment that we do now, and I was on a boat in Alaska, so I was not getting much assessment at all. I got sent to bed. And of course the concussion, was significant. 4 days later, I think I finally got flown home to Massachusetts, and another day later got assessed at an ER. But, I was alive. I had a concussion and, what we call a closed head injury now. We know it was somewhat significant. I had actually a lot of deficits for a long time, and I did spend about 15 months totally incapacitated. And it was through that process and the lack of the neurologist and the orthopedic specialist and, any doctors being able to actually help me. They, ironically, on the same day that my uncle brought me to a chiropractor who said, I can fix this, the Western medicine world advised me that I was quote unquote medically stable. In other words, I would never get any better. And I do believe that if I had not seen the chiropractor who said, we can fix this, prior to me hearing that I was never getting any better, I can't imagine the despair that I would have been in. It's really like, I believe it was the universe, God, spirit, protecting me from that level of despair, because it was no quality of life I had. And so I went to this chiropractor multiple times per week for a few months, and she brought me back to my almost regular self. I mean, I have a a brain injury, and so like I definitely lost things, and it's been fascinating to experience. It's been 27 years this month, and it's been fascinating to experience like that I still improve from time to time. But I lost things for sure because of that injury. But what I gained was an understanding of what it's like to need medical care, and what it's like to try to navigate a system that doesn't have answers, and that when they give you something that they consider an answer and it hurts you. I was put on medications that ended up giving me an unbelievable number of PVCs, of an arrhythmia. It's not dangerous, but it's uncomfortable when you don't know what it is and you feel like you're going to die. So I just had some experiences in the medical world that were eye-opening, and I was young. This process was between 19 and 21 while I was really incapacitated and seeking this medical treatment and not able to get answers that actually helped me get better. And then, as I said, a chiropractor ended up being able to kind of recover me from that place. It ended up being like musculoskeletal stuff in my neck that was keeping me in these cycles of headaches and just incredible like blood coming back into around my eyes. I would wake up with black eyes again and look like a raccoon, and then for like the next anywhere from like 3 days to 14 days be sleeping like 23 hours a day and not be able to like open my eyes and be coherent and stuff. It was quite an experience. I now look back and think, my goodness, my mom, it must have really, really hurt her heart to watch me like that, because I was not right, and there was nothing that anyone was successfully doing for me to provide answers. That brought me to the healthcare field. I decided, of course, I wanted to be a chiropractor after that experience because I had been fixed by a chiropractor, kind of like resurrected in some way. And so I pursued looking into what you have to do to go to chiropractic school. And that's why I started college. A nursing career was something that was kind of brought to my attention. I knew that I wanted to be a family nurse practitioner and be a primary care provider and not specialize in any, one field of medicine and not only one age or only one sex. I wanted to be able to treat everybody who needed me. So after the first year of the master's program, I had my RN license, and I was able to then pause the program, work as a registered nurse for 3 years, get divorced, have a child, and then decide to go back to the master's program and finish my family nurse practitioner degree. Now, in those 3 years, I worked both in hospital setting and nursing home settings because it actually was so much more applicable to the work that I knew I would do as a family nurse practitioner in terms of me getting to learn the medications, learn how people in their regular day-to-day lives, now institutionalized lives, but their real life, their home, it was their home. And so I was participating with people in the nursing homes in their homes and getting to watch their responses to different medication changes, to different wound care treatments, to, the presence of activities and joy and connection and family visits and all of this. And that was such a gift to me and my future career as a nurse practitioner, to actually witness people in their real lives responding to things that I would make the decisions about in the future. I would write the prescription. I would suggest a treatment, and how that impacts them, not just in my office in the visit, but how does that impact the next day and week and month and year of their life. That was an invaluable experience for me. So I love my nursing home experience as a registered nurse. I think it really helped shape who I am as a nurse practitioner. It was amazing how being a nurse practitioner turned out to be exactly the right blend of getting to teach science to a small group of people or a person at a time, and getting to teach such a wide variety of science and also bring in psychology and trauma and life experience and real world, and kind of blending together all the things that I really found myself to be kind of equipped to do. I got to talk with people in their vulnerable moments when they really needed help, and I got to usually, hopefully, bring them helpful things. And when I didn't know how to be helpful, I found out, or tried like heck to find out how to be helpful. And that was so rewarding to me. I really felt that I was in the right place. Being a nurse practitioner was the right career for me. My plan was always to end up in Montana for some reason, because that was kind of a bucket list item for me. But what I envisioned doing with my nurse practitioner degree was working as a primary care provider here on the East Coast for a couple years and getting some real experience under my belt, and then going out west to Montana and serving in an underserved area, because so much of Montana is underserved. I got hired by Indian Health Service to be a primary care provider on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in kind of almost the northeast corner of the state. It's out on the plains, no glaciers, no mountains, none of that, just kind of as far as the eye could see, grass and wheat. And I was there for 5 years on that Indian reservation, and had quite an education in many, many realms, for which I am eternally grateful. I made amazing friends. I met the most wonderful, loving, caring people. I got to witness how community matters, and really getting to feel and be part of a community that the members care for one another. It was life-altering in myriad ways. Along with all those, community learning, etc., I learned a tremendous amount about healthcare. I learned about illness. I learned about wellness. I learned to be the person who could bring up the question. I could prove the question, this person might be at risk if we don't get this scan. And in that way, I could get it approved. And so I pretty quickly became the provider that people who had a big enough problem that they really felt that they needed an answer, they waited to see me. So the doors opened at 8, and they'd sit in the waiting room and wait. And I've always been thorough, sometimes known as slow. I like to think of it as thorough and methodical. And so people waited a lot of hours to see me, which I'm not happy about, but I was a new provider, and I was sifting through the mess that is Indian Health Service and trying to get people the care that they needed and deserved. So as part of my time doing the workups and, trying to access the care that my patients so deserved, playing those games of, doing my own homework enough to figure out what, with my labs, what can I prove that they might be at risk for, and, how can I write that note in a way that is compelling to then access the care that they need. I got a really deep education in kind of like every specialty, because we didn't have any specialists. We were 2, sometimes 3 primary care providers, and usually one of those was a locum tenens, meaning that they were there for a month and then we never saw them again, so they really didn't care about the people. And sometimes I would learn special things from them that they were good at in their field, one little pearl from each person or whatever. But the bottom line was, like, we were a tiny clinic in the middle of nowhere, and I needed to take care of people with every kind of problem. And on the Indian reservation, there's an unreal amount of autoimmune disease, an unreal amount of type 2 diabetes, an unreal amount of kidney disease, high blood pressure, heart disease, liver disease. And I can't tell you how many times I heard, How come no one ever told me that before? And I just knew I was in the right place doing my education. I was getting to be a teacher in ways that mattered to people. And it was like the most fulfilling thing for that stage of my life to get to do that. And sometimes it made a world of difference for people, and other times it didn't make a world of difference because a person's life situation was such that they weren't able to make lasting changes, and the traumas that were happening in their world or in their past made them not able to access those particular types of changes. And so I got to see all the full spectrum of sickness progressing and sickness stabilizing, and I prescribed a lot of medications. And then after my husband from Montana had a massive brain hemorrhage and needed further medical care, once we kind of maxed out the care accessible within a 300-mile radius from our house out in Montana, I brought him back to Massachusetts. I learned quickly when I started my next job in a large primary care office with access to insurance and specialists and everything in Massachusetts that my experience was deep and wide. And that really helped me to serve people in kind of regular primary care with good workups as I sent them off to specialists. So that process of then having the capacity to send people off to specialists with their health insurance and access to specialists allowed me to see the notes coming back to me as the primary care provider and see what the specialists were examining and testing and, concluding from their observations and assessments. And I ended up being very frustrated that so many people who were, often women in their 30s and early 40s, which was kind of like me at the time, who were really suffering with really significant fatigue, often pain, and sometimes other type symptoms. They were often being told, well, something's happening, but we can't find what it is right now, so come back in a year. And basically, see if you're sick enough for me to treat you then. And this would actually happen year after year, where it was like, you're just supposed to get worse for 3 years before you can get treatment. And I just thought, this is not right. It's not fair. It's not right. It's not a field I want to be working in. It's not the way that I see making a difference in people's lives. Like, I was really frustrated. I thought there has to be something better than this. And so that kind of put me on a quest to end up landing to find functional medicine. And functional medicine, is looking deeper, looking at the biochemistry, looking at the pathophysiology, and really trying to allow the body or coax the body or help the body get back to working the way it was made to work. How is it supposed to work, so to speak? And that was like, whoa. I mean, this rocked my world. I sobbed because it just felt like I had clearly landed right where I was supposed to be in this educational setting of like, now we understand how we can actually help people. And then I had to come to the real painful realization that the care that I had been providing through the years on the Indian reservation and the years up until I found functional medicine in Massachusetts, I had been prescribing medications that were doing harm to people that I didn't know about. For instance, metformin is a great drug. I still prescribe metformin. It does wonderful things to the physiology of the body to help increase insulin sensitivity. But it also depletes B vitamins. And I didn't know that. And so I didn't counsel any of the first hundreds and hundreds of people that I prescribed that med to take a B complex with their metformin. And in that way, I was setting them up for future dis-ease, future detoxification problems. I didn't know. And so there's a real kind of cognitive dissonance as you venture into functional medicine of like, okay, can I live with the fact that I did this because I didn't know better? I did the best I knew how at the time. And today I know better. And so I'm going to do better. But it takes a lot of time to do better. And it's kind of swimming against the current of our Western medicine culture and the short visits that we have. And the, take 2 of these and follow up in 3 months culture that is our, unfortunately, primary care pattern. And so I got to watch some people not make that choice as they learned about functional medicine, not make the choice to take the plunge into that reality that I have hurt people with my practice, that what I knew best at the time wasn't enough. It wasn't the whole answer. And I realized that it's really my dad's principled nature that came through me to give me the courage to step into functional medicine and say, I need to do this. So I'm so grateful to my dad's principled teaching. My dad died 4 years ago. Eventually, I was practicing primary care back in my hometown of Amherst, Massachusetts, and that is an environment that is totally receptive to the concepts of functional medicine. And so my functional medicine education, coinciding with working in a primary care office in Amherst, was serendipitous. And my boss was open to me bringing these new tools that I was getting trained in to the practice. And so my functional medicine practice really evolved over about 3 years as my training, got deeper and deeper. And then I got certified from the Institute for Functional Medicine in functional medicine, and then strictly practiced functional medicine at the practice. And so I was treating kind of the way in primary care on the reservation, I treated whatever came in the door. I also, in functional medicine, treated whatever came in the door because it was in a primary care office, so I could only see the people who were primary care patients there. And so whatever kind of Western medicine was not giving them that they needed or wanted for treatment options, my colleagues would send them up to me for my take and my perspective and, kind of alternative interventions. And so I was really fortunate to get to practice a very, very wide berth of functional medicine, applying functional medicine truly in primary care across the board. And what ended up happening was, I also expanded my treatment capacity. I had to do research outside of my regular training to learn, how to successfully approach like mold toxicity and chronic Lyme and these things that are not recognized in Western medicine and aren't really trained per se in a typical functional medicine certification program. Everything in functional medicine is individualized, but with the amount of kind of, individualized reasons why somebody might have toxicity, really, for whatever reason, they don't teach you how to detox somebody in IFM training. They teach you some principles about how to think about it, but they do not teach you how to do it. So I pursued that education on my own, along with a bunch of different, kind of deep dive educations in functional medicine to figure out how to get the individuals in front of me to find wellness again. And so by necessity, and that's the way it was on the reservation. It was like, what was in front of me? What did I need to do to figure out how to get what this person needed? And that's what I ended up doing in functional medicine as well. And so I learned really a lot of stuff outside the box and just kind of, I guess I love to learn. So I was always, reading and watching and listening to various things so that I would have a wider toolbox in functional medicine to help people feel well again. And that eventually when a lot of people had gotten well and kind of left my care, and some people then drifted back after a year or so and were kind of unwell again, and they were like, you helped so much, let's do this again. And so I was seeing patterns, and not really totally knowing exactly what I was seeing. And then I always had this little core of people for whom we would figure out what was going on, and I knew how to treat that, and yet the treatments either didn't get the results that they should have gotten, or the people didn't tolerate the treatments for a variety of reasons or whatever. But in any case, there was this core of people that just were not getting better the way I expected them to get better with the treatments that I knew were good treatments. And that took me on a deeper quest, of course, and along with the help from Micaela Giles, my co-founder at OCC, she helped me to really realize the power of the autonomic nervous system in the role of healing the body. And as I dove into Stephen Porges and the Pocket Guide to Polyvagal Theory, which is hardly a pocket guide if you're going to go pick that up, and Deb Dana and a whole bunch of other resources, I really found what I consider to be the key to unlocking wellness for people that have not responded as we would have expected to excellent alternative interventions. And on that foundation, we built Origins Collaborative Care. I can't even. It's like, I guess I'm emotional about this.
It is. I mean, it's.
It's on that foundation that we were called to build Origins Collaborative Care, because there's people who don't have another option. And I know in my heart of hearts that this program that we have built accesses wellness for everybody who participates. That doesn't mean it happens fast. That doesn't mean it's predictable for everyone. We don't know exactly what the journey looks like for any one person. But there's infinite power in the fact of re-regulating the autonomic nervous system to allow what our wise bodies know how to do and want to do, which is heal. Every person can get to this place where their body heals, and we can help get there. We want it to be that every health office, every healthcare office knows how to help you get there, and so we are going to do our best to spread this as far and wide as we can. But for right now, that is why we started Origins Collaborative Care, because we didn't find anybody else doing it. And we know personally the people that need this care, and we know that there are lots of them.